You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, session hijacking, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, session cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific exposed data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation that fits seamlessly into existing incident response frameworks. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show.
Figuring out what went wrong during a rocket launch is all part of the iterative improvement process. And Rocket Lab did just that recently after their Electron launch failure in September. But the root cause analysis had me tempted to dust off some of my old physics textbooks, and maybe you too. Okay, so offhand, how familiar are you with Paschen's Law? And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry, I got you. I promise it'll all make sense once you hear what Rocket Lab found.
T-minus 20 seconds to LOS speed rest. Go for deploy. Roger roll.
Today is November 9th, 2023. I'm Maria Varmazis, and this is T-minus. Rocket Lab sets a return to launch window for Electron. Astra founders offer to take the company private. ESA, Airbus, and Voyager sign an MOU. And our guest today is Aravind Ravichandran for our monthly overview segment on the Earth observation market. Let's dive in, shall we? Rocket Lab says the Electron will be back at Launch Complex 1 in Mahia, New Zealand at the end of this month to resume launches, with the next one scheduled to take Japan-based Earth imaging company iQPS Satellite, their QPS SAR-5 specifically, to low Earth orbit. After many months of trying to chase down the root cause of the anomaly on the Electron back in September, Rocket Lab said that they've figured it out. And the reason was, well, a stack of very rare circumstances that just happened to line up in this instance. And here's what the company said. After more than 7 weeks of extensive analysis of the mission's manufacturing test and flight data, the findings of the investigation overwhelmingly indicate that an unexpected electrical arc occurred within the power supply system, which provides high voltage to the Rutherford engine's motor controllers, shorting the battery packs that provide power to the launch vehicle's second stage. In other words, the conditions were, unfortunately, just right for things in the Electron to hit the threshold under Paschen's Law, which is the equation used to determine the voltage that you need to create an electric arc between 2 electrodes in a gas. And those conditions were, and I quote again, electricity in the presence of helium and nitrogen, while under a partial pressure environment, unrestrained by a fault in the high-voltage loom and exacerbated by an alternating current, aligned at a point on the Paschen curve that allows an electrical arc to form and travel. TLDR, there was definitely some bad luck at play here, but Rocket Lab says they're not relying on luck to keep it all from happening again. They've put in place some enhanced testing processes for one thing, and a corrective measure to prevent another rare but unfortunate electrical arc from happening again. Take that, Paschen's Law. Astra is not dead yet. In fact, it may be getting better. Maybe it'll go for a walk. The company throughout much of this year has been trying to keep its stock above $1 a share to keep it from getting delisted from NASDAQ, but to little avail. And today, the company was thrown a lifeline from its founders, CEO Chris Kemp and CTO Adam London, who offered to the Astra board to buy out all of the outstanding Astra stock at $1.50 a share, which would take the company private again for a total of around $30 million. In their letter to the Astra board, London and Kemp said this: "We believe that Astra's strategic objectives and business prospects will be best served as a private company. Taking the company private while delivering a meaningful premium to current shareholders allows for the best interests of shareholders as well as the company, its employees, and its customers to be met." And of course, we will update you as soon as we hear what the board decides. An update on the cuts from yesterday's Virgin Galactic story. During the investor call late yesterday, the company said that they plan to pause space flights in mid-2024 to focus resources on final assembly of the new Delta ships. 18% of its workforce have been laid off so far, with more phone calls expected today. The company currently has a headcount of less than 850 employees. CEO Michael Colglazier told investors that they forecast having sufficient capital to bring the first 2 Delta ships into service and achieve positive cash flow in 2026. Geospatial intelligence company BlackSky held their first quarterly report yesterday. They reported a net income of $675,000 for the third quarter, improving from a net loss of $13.1 million for the same period last year. The company brought in $21.3 million in third quarter revenue, up 26% from a year prior. Brian E. O'Toole, BlackSky CEO, said, "Increased customer demand worldwide for BlackSky's space-based intelligence drove record revenues in the third quarter, and coupled with strong operating leverage and responsible cost management, keeps us on track to achieve positive adjusted EBITDA in Q4 this year." The Department of the Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office, in partnership with the United States Space Force, is scheduled to launch the 7th mission of the X-37B orbital test vehicle next month from Kennedy Space Center, Florida. And the X-37B orbital, if you don't know, is a reusable space plane that can perform missions vital to understanding sustained operations in the space domain. In 2022, the X-37B set a new record of 908 days in orbit since its first mission in 2010. And the X-37B Mission 7 will launch on a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket for the first time, with a wide range of test and experimentation objectives. These tests include operating the reusable spaceplane in new orbital regimes, experimenting with future space domain awareness technologies, and investigating the radiation effects on materials provided by NASA. Sierra Space has successfully tested a new 5,500-pound Force hypergolic rocket engine that the company calls a groundbreaking addition to its portfolio. The new engine delivers a vacuum-specific impulse of over 339 seconds, which Sierra Space says makes it very efficient for a storable engine. The engine is also designed for continuous throttling from 5,500 pounds force of thrust at 100% power down to 900 pounds force at 17% power, allowing for precise control and maneuverability. The European Space Agency, Airbus, and Voyager Space have signed a Memorandum of Understanding outlining their collaboration for the Starlab space station in the post-International Space Station era. The agreement outlines the parties' intention to commonly foster science and technology development and explore the potential for collaboration in conjunction with post-ISS low Earth orbit destinations. The partnership will initially focus on, but is not limited to, exploring opportunities for sustained access to space for Europe through the Starlab space station, which is expected to be launched in 2028. And staying in Europe for a moment, Italian satellite logistics company D-Orbit has announced a new investor in their current Series C funding round. Japanese company Marubeni Corporation leads the new funding, which includes Italian, European, and international investors, and is expected to exceed a total of 100 million euros. D-Orbit says it will use the new capital to strengthen its operations in Italy while accelerating progress on a global scale, with an emphasis on in-orbit servicing, space cloud computing, and orbital transportation. And that concludes our briefing for today. You'll find links to further reading in our show notes, along with a few stories that we didn't mention. One's on Putin calling on closer cooperation with China on military satellites, one on the Space Force updating its data library, and the third on space imagery companies capturing images of Gaza. All these and more at space.n2k.com. Hey T-Minus crew, if your business is looking to grow your voice in the industry, expand the reach of your thought leadership, or recruit talent, T-Minus can help. We'd like to hear from you. Just send us an email at space@n2k.com or send us a note through our website so we can connect about building a program to meet your goals.
This episode is brought to you by Palo Alto Networks, the leader in cybersecurity. As AI-driven attacks increase, organizations can't afford to have network security that's stuck in the past. Discover how Palo Alto Networks can help you predict what's coming and proactively secure against it with a zero-trust, AI-powered network security platform built to secure whatever, whenever, wherever. To learn more, visit paloaltonetworks.com/network security platform.
Our guest today is Aravind Ravichandran for our monthly overview segment on the Earth observation market. Now, nations are proliferating their presence in orbit and making their own data available, but there doesn't seem to be much of a plan for what's going to happen to that data that they're collecting, or how it's going to be used, or how that data is going to be compatible with different applications. And I asked Aravind to provide us with his thoughts on that.
Well, it's usually the thing which is popular in the space industry is to talk a lot about the things that happen before the launch and not about the things that happen after the launch. I think I don't hear that anymore as much, but then even until a couple of years ago when I speak to investors, people who are outsiders, they just think that Earth observation, okay, satellites are launched and then they will start making money right off the boat. And they are generating value because they have launched the satellite, the work is done, because the hard part starts after. Right? Like, what is this data actually used for? Is it really useful for that application? Because only when you get to orbit, you'll figure out that, you know what, this quality is not good enough for measuring whatever you wanted to measure or see what we wanted to see. And in a lot of cases, the data has to be combined with other data sources. So if you're not interoperable, if the data is not interoperable, then it's not really serving its purpose. And, you know, even until like 3-4 years ago, if you are a new Earth observation company that are launching or a country who is launching a new satellite, it's not something that you cared about. And then, you know, you realize now that if it's not interoperable with the larger, more popular and more openly available, the Sentinels and the Landsats, your data is probably not useful because you have one satellite and they have had satellite data collection over 40, 50 years. So if your data is not interoperable, and then you cannot really derive anything because your data point starts today. If you can be interoperable with them, then your data point can extend and you can see over a period of time. So I think interoperability is, again, another thing. Also, more importantly, are they the right kind of people, especially for national missions? You know, do they need to invest in education? Because if they have like one university, which I know quite a few countries have like one university that is having a proper remote sensing course, then, you know, you may launch all the satellites you want, then the value is not going to be derived. Or if you had expectations to have economic output from satellites, it's not going to be derived. I mean, maybe another country can derive those benefits, but if that country specifically does not have enough people, enough talent coming in, and that's another, again, and it's another soft point, if you will. Another point that I forgot to mention is more, where's the data available? Let's say you have the people, and you've launched the satellite, but if you've not made the data easy to access, like, how are people going to use it? And I know of a few countries that have done it and they're kind of rectifying it. As we see it, India is a good example. India has released a new remote sensing policy recently, a few months ago, and that is really their goal. India has been collecting data for a couple of decades now, but the accessibility of the data has been kind of hindered only to a few select organizations and people. And now the new policy aims to rectify that by actually making it more easy, more open, and in some cases free to get the data. And it was really what the success of Landsat and now the European Sentinel program, Copernicus program, is really because they made the data easy to access, free to access. And I think all of those factors are important for the success of an Earth observation strategy because, yes, satellites are great because they generate jobs. You get a lot of know-how about developing satellites. But then what comes after is important, especially if the country has like a long-term plan and they want to keep launching satellites, then they need to prove their case. And if, none of these factors are met, then follow-up mission might not be approved in their local budget because they may ask, so what did we do with the satellite that we just launched? Really nothing? Then really the follow-up mission is not going to work out, right? Because they have nothing to show. Yep,
absolutely. And it's sort of a back question, but I'm wondering for commercial players, usually data availability is like one of the top priorities. That is the name of the game in a lot of cases, but I'm wondering still, what are some lessons that a commercial player can take from this angle, so to speak? Data silos obviously are not helpful to anyone, especially if you want to make that available to a customer. Any other thoughts on that for commercial folks?
Yeah, I think it's basically most of the points that we discussed. It's about having data available in a way that is easy, with a user experience that is easy. And companies like Sky-Fi, who are making it with very easy user experience that I can send it to anybody and they can go and download a satellite image. Now, obviously, there are players like Skywatch and Up42 on what I call the platform data distribution layer who are making it easy for developers with an API to access. So I think having the data available for both audiences is important because you also want, of course, to satisfy the experts who know how to use an API and have the data available via an API, but also to invest in something that is a lot more attractive for non-experts because they're probably the ones who are going to have to play with the data to create more applications. And I think the other factors that I mentioned about interoperability, enabling people to store, fuse, and process data in a way that's efficient is probably what will lead to their success. And a lot of them have realized it, and either they're investing in either they have started doing it themselves, and they're developing their own data management and data processing infrastructure, or they are partnering with the names that I've mentioned to do that. So, they can be sure that they are generating the data, someone else is distributing it, but then the distribution is happening in a way that is scalable. Anybody can use it. It's interoperable. So it's almost like the data distribution layer is now becoming or taking ownership of all of that factors of, getting the right data, fusing or allowing to fuse with different data sources, and also, making it attractive for everyone who wants to see a satellite image.
Absolutely. I want to make sure I give you a chance to sort of sum up, especially since it'll be another month before we speak again. But in that time, we probably will have some solid Q3 data coming in from companies. Anything else that sort of on the horizon for you over the next few weeks that you're interested in hearing about?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's that time of the year when there's a SpaceX transporter mission is going to go. I don't know the exact date yet. It's probably next week or in a couple of weeks. But transporter missions are always exciting, and I have the data to now say that over the last 8 transporter Earth observation missions, we're the class with the most number of satellites. So even with the next one, I know of a few that are going to launch that are public information, the few that will become public information soon about who's going to launch. And it's going to be yet another feast where, transporter launches are always great because there's 20, 30 companies from 7, 8, 10 different countries launching. So it's almost like a party for all kind of, space nuts. So it's going to be fun to look at transporter launches. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to finding out who's the one that I don't know about that are going to launch. Maybe they're going to launch the first satellite. Maybe they're going to launch a satellite with a new sensor or with some kind of advancement that I know about, didn't know about. So something that I'm going to track over November is basically that. And I'm also, seeing, because end of November, COP28 is going to begin Dubai. So I'm curious to see if there's going to be any obviously, we can talk about it in another episode about like the convergence between Earth observation and climate. So there's a huge synergy between the two areas. So I'm curious to see over the next few weeks if we will see any announcements, if we'll see any developments that are going to be relevant to COP28 that are going to come about, either from the UAE itself or from the larger commercial companies out there in Earth observation. So that's going to be a big focus over this next few weeks.
We'll be right back.
Now, a word from our sponsor, the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute, currently seeking qualified applicants for its innovative Master of Science in Security Informatics degree program. Study alongside world-class interdisciplinary experts and gain unparalleled educational, research, and professional experience in information security and assurance. Interested U.S. citizens should consider the National Science Foundation's CyberCore Scholarship for Service program, which covers tuition and a $6,000 annual professional development allowance, as well as providing a $37,000 additional annual stipend. Apply for the scholarship and the fall semester by March 1st. Learn more at cs.jhu.edu/MSSI.
Welcome back. Just a quick closer for today's show, and it's a PSA from me to you if you're a NASA fan. Now, NASA has completely revamped its app. And did you know that they even had an app? Yep, NASA has an app, and it's called NASA Plus, and it's completely free. It's a streaming service and a really nice way to see the latest images and lots of live video, as well as documentaries about the cosmos, our planet, science, technology, engineering, and NASA, past, present, and future. So I've got it loaded up on my Apple TV, and it looks and runs beautifully. And I had the old version on there too, but it was pretty bare bones. So yeah, I am enjoying this new version that has a ton of content in there. And I should mention also that it is for all ages. So there are a ton of in-depth documentaries in there for me and my watching. And there's also a lot of content for my kid as well. So yeah, NASA Plus. It's great. It's a newly updated app for just about every phone and streaming service out there. So definitely go check it out. I recommend it. That's it for T-Minus for November 9th, 2023. For additional resources from today's report, check out our show notes at space.n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K and podcasts like T-Minus are part of the daily routine of many of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. This episode was produced by Alice Carruth, mixing by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Brandon Karp. And I'm Maria Varmazes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.